Have you ever listened to a song or watched a movie that just feels effortless? Like it's just pure magic? Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving right in to deconstruct a true monumental piece of American pop culture, The Way We Were. Whether you know it as the classic 1973 film starring Barbra Streisand and Robert Redford, or as the sweeping ballad that defined an entire era, the final product feels so perfectly put together. But, as we're about to see, this masterpiece was actually forged in the fires of intense creative conflict, unbelievable behind-the-scenes chaos, and frankly, an exhausting amount of dedication. We are going to break down exactly what it took to build this iconic hit. To really understand the sheer scale of the effort involved here, just think about this number for a second. 33. That is the number of straight, completely uninterrupted vocal takes Barbra Streisand sang in the recording studio just to get the title track right. According to studio bassist Carol Kai, who was actually playing on the session, Streisand arrived late, but when she got there, she just relentlessly recorded the song over and over and over again with a massive orchestra behind her. Imagine doing take after grueling take, pushing through exhaustion, until finally they locked eyes through the glass of the sound booth, knowing they had captured absolute perfection. That number, 33, it perfectly captures the grueling pursuit of excellence that defined the entire project. So, did all that immense effort actually pay off? Oh, absolutely. When you look at the 1974 Billboard Year-End Hot 100, The Way We Were didn't just chart, it completely dominated. It was the #1 song of the entire year. It beat out massive tracks like Terry Jack's Seasons in the Sun and the Love Unlimited Orchestra's Love's Theme. We're talking 23 weeks on the Hot 100 chart. This wasn't just a hit song anymore. It was a bona fide cultural phenomenon that resonated across the entire country.
And, the success definitely wasn't limited to just the music. The film itself was a box office monster, pulling in a staggering $45 million return. Now, to put that into perspective, why that really matters is the cost. It was made on a mere $5 million budget. That is an astronomical return on investment for Columbia Pictures. But getting to that incredibly profitable finish line, yeah, that was anything but easy.
Section 1. Real History and Blacklists.
To really get why the friction in this movie works so well, we have to look at where it came from. This wasn't just some piece of slick Hollywood make-believe. It was deeply personal, drawn from real history. The original script was written by Arthur Laurents, and he pulled heavily from his own life. The character of Katie Morosky, she was actually based on a real fiery campus radical he knew back at Cornell University in the 1930s named Fanny Price. On top of that, the later acts of the film deal heavily with the McCarthy era in the Hollywood blacklist. Laurents wasn't just researching history, he lived it. He himself had been investigated and blacklisted by the House Un-American Activities Committee and was literally denied a passport. So all that political tension and personal heartbreak you see, it was incredibly raw and very real for the writer.
Section 2. Script, Drama, and Casting.
Now, finding the right leading man to match the intensity of Katie proved to be a Herculean task, one that almost derailed the whole thing. The fundamental friction between the two main characters is just striking. On one side, you have Katie Morosky, a stridently vocal Marxist Jew, passionately anti-war, politically active. And on the flip side, you have Hubbell Gardner, a carefree, politically indifferent white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. They are complete polar opposites. And what's super fascinating here is that this on-screen friction perfectly mirrored the behind-the-scenes struggles. Getting a major Hollywood actor to play the passive, indifferent Hubbell opposite Streisand's absolute powerhouse Katie was a massive hurdle.
In fact, Robert Redford flat-out rejected the role at first. He felt Hubbell was, in his words, shallow and one-dimensional, not very real, a pinup girl in reverse. Redford argued that Hubbell was basically just a prop in the script, a symbol rather than a fully fleshed-out human being. He wanted to know what Hubbell actually wanted out of life. It took immense, relentless pressure from Streisand and director Sidney Pollack to finally wear Redford down and get him to say yes.
But of course, getting Redford on board just created a whole new set of problems. Arthur Laurents, the original writer, explicitly warned director Sidney Pollack about trying to artificially inflate Redford's role. Laurents told him, "The picture is Barbra's no matter what you do, because the story is hers. Be careful you don't destroy it trying to give it to him." So now you have this massive clash of visions. Do we preserve the original personal story, or do we appease a giant Hollywood star who demands a more substantial character?
Well, this conflict led to outright panic over at the studio. Producer Ray Stark actually pushed Arthur Laurents out of the project entirely, and they brought in an astounding 11 different high-profile writers to polish the script and beef up Redford's part. 11. We're talking heavyweights like Francis Ford Coppola and Dalton Trumbo, which is incredibly ironic considering Trumbo was one of the most famous victims of the exact same Hollywood blacklist the movie depicts. The whole production actually had to shut down and delay while these 11 writers desperately tried to balance the script.
Section 3. Scoring a masterpiece.
Okay, so if you thought the script was a mess, the musical battleground was every bit as chaotic. The timeline of creating the iconic title song was just an absolute roller coaster. First, composer Marvin Hamlisch writes this melody in a major key. Streisand initially resists it. Then Alan and Marilyn Bergman add their lyrics, but Streisand feels the song is just way too sentimental, so she pushes Hamlisch for a more complex version. The disagreements were actually so severe that, incredibly, the song was completely cut from the film's original edit. Let that sink in. Imagine this movie without that song.
But Hamlisch, he knew they had something special on their hands, particularly with those now iconic opening lyrics by the Bergmans, "Memories Light the Corners of My Mind." When the studio held a test screening of the film without the song, the final scene, where the two lovers realize they have absolutely no future together, fell completely flat. I mean, crickets. The audience felt nothing. Hamlisch immediately realized that the emotional weight of his melody and those lyrics were the exact missing ingredient to making the ending work.
So what did he do? He begged Columbia Pictures to let him rescore that final scene and put the song back in. The studio finally agreed, but with one massive catch. Hamlisch had to pay for the recording session himself. As he noted later, believe me, it wasn't mere pocket change, but I got what I wanted. He literally put his own hard-earned money on the line because he believes so fiercely in the power of this music to save the film's ending.
And man, were his instincts spot on. With the song reinserted into that final scene, they tested the film again. Hamlisch later recalled sitting in the back of the theater, hearing one woman start to cry, and then another. Within minutes, there literally wasn't a dry eye left in the house. The song provided the exact emotional catharsis that the story needed. It was the glue that suddenly held the entire narrative together.
Section 4. An unconditional timeless legacy.
So out of all this sheer chaos, the script rewrites, the delays, the musical battles, they forged an unconditional, timeless piece of art. And the critical acclaim? It was absolute validation for all those intense studio battles, and for Barbra Streisand's grueling 33 vocal takes. Walking away with Academy Awards for Best Original Song and Best Original Score, a Golden Globe and a Grammy Award for Song of the Year, the industry universally recognized the absolute brilliance of what Hamlisch, the Bergmans, and Streisand had managed to create together. And the emotional resonance of this work hasn't faded one bit. In fact, it's kind of only deepened with time. Over 50 years later, the song still serves as the ultimate anthem of memory, of love, and of loss, forever tying the actors and the audience together in this shared emotional experience.
Which leaves us with this final, really fascinating question to ponder. Look at what it actually took to make this hit. 11 writers, actors refusing roles, songs being cut and then paid for out of pocket, 33 agonizing vocal takes. Is art that's born from intense, messy conflict ultimately more enduring than art born from perfect harmony? Honestly, perhaps the deep friction between the characters of Katie and Hubble and the very real friction behind the scenes is the very secret to its magic. It is definitely something to think about the next time you hear those famous opening chords. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep learning.